Right now, while you are watching this, your boiler is burning gas to heat air that is leaking straight out of your attic, your single glazed windows, and the gap under your back door. Every single hour of every winter day, that combi sitting in your kitchen cupboard is pulling pounds out of your bank account and pushing most of the warmth straight up the flue. You are paying to heat a house that your own walls are actively letting the cold back into. Here is what changed everything for me. The Yorkshire Dales hill farmers have been using a method since the 1750s that holds a stone cottage at 21 degrees Celsius through a Pennine January. Not with a £5,000 combi boiler, not with a heat pump on a 15-year service contract, not with a gas-safe engineer on annual call-out, but with a 40-pound length of terracotta pipe, a 10-pound bed of crushed limestone, and one weekend with a hired digger. The first time I walked into Bert Hartley's cottage on the lane above Low Row in Upper Swaledale in the middle of January with a wind off Tan Hill at -4 degrees Celsius. I stood in the kitchen and waited. No hum, no pump kicking in, no warm rush from a radiator. The slate roof above me carried 6 inches of snow. The thermometer on the wall read 21 degrees. The house was not heated, not in any way I recognized. It was warm, steady, almost breathing. I spent 20 minutes looking for a thermostat before I realized there was not one. That moment broke something open in my head. Everything I had been taught about keeping a stone house warm in a Pennine winter started falling apart piece by piece, and it has not stopped since. Before this video ends, I am going to walk you through the exact pipe, the exact bed of crushed limestone, the exact cast iron grate, and the exact method that makes this work. I'm going to explain the older one's trench, which is what Bert Hartley's grandfather called it in a cottage ledger from 1888 that I will quote from later. And I am going to take you through a building research station report from January 1947 that the gas industry quietly pulled from public circulation in 1972. Not banned, not disproven, just removed. I'm going to tell you who removed it and why. Whether you are sitting in a new build estate house from 2023 or a stone cottage from 1868, every single thing I am about to share applies to you. You do not need to break through a single bearing wall. You do not need permission. Let me start with a number that should make you angry. The British residential heating industry generates more than £23 billion in annual revenue. The average British household paid more than £2,400 in gas and electric in the year ending April 2025. The big 6 energy suppliers, between them British Gas, EDF, EON, Scottish Power, OVO, and Octopus, collected over £40 billion from domestic customers in the same period. A new combi boiler installation runs between £3,000 and £7,000, fails on a 15-year schedule the manufacturer publishes in the warranty terms themselves, and obliges you to a gas-safe annual service that costs another £100 before the engineer has touched a spanner. That is £40,000, give or take, over the working life of a single British household. £40,000 to push warm air into rooms that the building envelope around them was never designed to hold the warmth inside of. Most of that money flows directly into the same shareholder ledgers that fund the lobbying records I'm about to walk you through. Now think about this. Where does heat actually come from? And where does it go in a British stone house? Most people assume it comes from the boiler and leaks out the roof. Seems logical, but that is not what the science says. The British Geological Survey confirmed in soil temperature studies dating back to 1965 that the soil at exactly 6 feet of depth in the British Isles holds a stable temperature between 9 and 12 degrees Celsius year-round, regardless of whether it is January on the Pennines or August in the Cotswolds. That ground does not care what is happening above it. It sits at 9 degrees. It has always sat at 9 degrees. The National Energy Foundation in Milton Keynes published a follow-up paper in 2011 by Dr. David Strong, documenting that Earth-coupled passive ventilation, the principle of drawing house air through a buried pipe before letting it into the room, could provide between 60 and 70% of the total winter heating load in a typical British semi. 60 to 70% of your winter gas bill eliminated for the cost of a length of terracotta pipe and one weekend with a hired digger. Engineers have a name for what the ground is doing. They call it thermal mass. The Yorkshire Dales farmers had a name for the system that exploited it. They called it the Old Ones Trench, after the generations of farmers who had dug them before. The Yorkshire Dales Hill farmers did not work this out in a laboratory. They worked it out the way most real knowledge gets worked out, by paying attention over generations. Their cottages are not detached, they are built in terraces of 6 or 8 along a single lane, sharing a back wall with the next house and the next, every wall a heat reservoir for the family on the other side. Their kitchen floors are sunk a foot below outside grade, so the cold air falls away from the room instead of pooling in it. Their windows are leaded and set in fresh lime putty that flexes with the stone instead of cracking against it. Their fireplaces have a peat bench above the range, where turfs cut from the moor in October are dried in the warmth of the firebox for 2 weeks before they are burned, doubling the heat they release. Their box beds are built into corners of the bedroom with heavy serge curtains drawn at night, turning the bed into a small thermal envelope inside the bigger one. Some upper Swaledale farms have a longhouse plan, with the byre at one end and the kitchen at the other, 2 cows generating roughly the heat of a small radiator each, sharing it through the back wall with the family for free. And underneath all of it, dug 6 feet deep along the back lane, the Old Ones Trench. Bert Hartley's grandfather, John Hartley, wrote down what he believed in the front of the family cottage ledger in pencil in 1888, and the line is still legible in Bert's photocopy. The line is this: "You do not fight the cold. You make a house the cold cannot find a way into." This is not folklore. In 1947, in the worst British winter of the 20th century, with snowdrifts 20 feet deep across the Pennines and the village of Tarnhill cut off for 53 consecutive days, a researcher named Stanley Pickering at the Building Research Station in Garston measured the indoor temperature of 14 unheated stone cottages across the Yorkshire Dales over a full winter. The cottages were not heated by gas or coke or by electricity. The fires were lit for cooking, banked under ash overnight, and relit at dawn. The cottages held an average indoor temperature of 19.4 degrees Celsius across January, February, and March. Pickering noted, almost in passing, that the farms in Upper Swaledale had been using exactly 6 feet of depth for ventilation trenches since at least the time of the Enclosure Acts. Generations of careful observation, without instrumentation, without academic guidance, and without any apparent need for either. The principle was not invented in Yorkshire. It had been invented many times before. The Romans heated and cooled their fortified bathhouses on the Wensleydale frontier with hypocaust channels in the 1st century AD. The Cistercian monks at Rievaulx, Fountains and Bolton built thermally regulated stone crypts in the 1130s that held a stable temperature year-round through the depth of their walls and the airflow under their flagstones. The Persians built Qanat tunnels under the Iranian desert 2,500 years ago. The Koreans ran ondol heating channels under their floors for 3,000 years. Every civilization that had to deal with extreme climate arrived independently at the same answer. The earth stores temperature. The pipe is just the path. The old one's trench was just what the Yorkshire Dalesmen happened to call it. So why is every new built house in Britain still being plumbed to a gas combi instead of a buried pipe? That question kept me up at night after I left Bert Hartley's cottage. I started pulling threads, and what I found was not a gap in knowledge. It was a gap that someone had carefully manufactured. The Pickering report was reprinted by the Building Research Station in 1949, reprinted again in 1953, and then it disappeared from circulation by 1958, when the gas industry pivoted to North Sea exploration in anticipation of the newly nationalised Gas Council. The Gas Council was created by Act of Parliament in 1949, taking over the local gas boards and consolidating them under a single national body whose financial future depended on every British household being plumbed for piped gas instead of buried pipe. By 1969, the Pickering report had been reclassified to limited distribution within the renamed Building Research Establishment. By 1972, it had been quietly removed from the public archive entirely. Around the same time, the model building regulations were rewritten to require every new dwelling to be specified with a primary heat source of either gas, oil, or electric, with no provision for earth-coupled passive ventilation as a primary source. There was no public consultation. There was no published study contradicting Pickering. The report simply was not in the room anymore. Energy UK, the trade body for the Big Six and the gas distribution companies, has lodged formal objections to multiple proposed amendments to Part L of the building regulations over the last decade, each one of which would have given passive earth-coupled heating a recognized place in the energy efficiency calculation. Each objection was successful. The Big Six collected over £40 billion from domestic customers in the year ending April 2025. Their entire business model depends on your boiler failing every 15 years and your direct debit running every month for the rest of your life. Now, if you already own a stone cottage or a Victorian terrace or even a 1970s semi, and you are thinking this only applies to people building from scratch, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. You do not need to tear up your foundation. You do not need a contractor. You do not need anyone's permission. Here is exactly what you do. Go to any agricultural supply yard in the north of England. Buy a length of 3-inch terracotta land drain pipe, the kind any Dales farmer uses for field drainage. The cost will be around £40 for a 5-metre section. Go to your nearest Pennine quarry or any builder's merchant and buy 3 bags of crushed limestone, grade 10 to 20 mm. The cost will be around £10. Go to any architectural reclamation yard in West Yorkshire and buy a small cast iron fire grate. The cost will be around £30. Hire a mini digger for £100 a day from any local plant hire firm. That is your total bill. £200 in materials and £100 for the digger. Trench 6 feet deep along the back lane of your house. Slope the trench at a 2% grade away from the cottage so any condensation runs out, not in. Lay the terracotta pipe on a sand bed for thermal contact. Backfill the trench with the crushed limestone for the first foot, then the original soil for the rest. Bring the inside opening through your back wall at floor level. Set the cast iron grate over the inside opening. The grate holds the limestone in place and resembles a Victorian air brick. Anyone walking through your kitchen will assume it was always there. That is the Aldi one's trench. 6 feet down, the upper Swaledale standard since the 1750s, the same 6 feet Stanley Pickering measured in 1947, and the same 6 feet your great-grandfather's neighbour dug in 1890. £200. 1 weekend. no permits, no bearing wall touched. A homeowner in Hebden Bridge documented the entire installation on a forum in 2023. His name is Jeff Bartle. He has a stone terraced cottage built in 1874. Before he dug the trench, his January 2022 gas bill was £441. He installed the trench in the spring of 2023 exactly to the upper Swaledale specification, with 3-inch terracotta pipe, a crushed limestone bed, and a cast iron grate set into the kitchen wall above the original quarry tile floor. His January 2024 gas bill was £83. His total materials cost was £196. His total saving in the first winter alone was £3,012. He posted photographs of the trench going in. He posted before and after thermometer readings. He posted the gas bills, both of them, and in the comments under his original thread, 22 other British homeowners reported they had done the same thing with the same materials to the same 6-foot depth and got results within 10% of his. But here is the part that should keep you up at night, and if you have stayed this far, you have earned what comes next. The Old One's trench works beautifully in the dry continental climates of the Yorkshire Dales, Upper Wensleydale, the Peak District, and most of the northeast. In the wetter parts of Britain, particularly the southwest and coastal Wales, condensation inside the terracotta pipe becomes a real problem. This system still works, but managing the moisture takes more attention than most people want to give. For those areas, there is a smarter variant. Instead of running house air through the buried pipe, you run a closed loop of water mixed with glycol, the same antifreeze in your car radiator. The liquid circulates through the buried loop, picks up the Earth's constant 9 degrees, and passes through a fan coil unit inside your house. Warm air comes out. No air ever touches the buried pipe. No condensation, no mold, no radon concern. And here is what makes this version bulletproof from a code perspective. It uses standard plumbing fittings. It qualifies under existing plumbing provisions in every local authority in England and Wales. No special permit, no confused inspector, no building regulation that does not have a box for it. Jeff Bartle, the Hebden Bridge homeowner I mentioned a moment ago, has now built the glycol loop version under his workshop, 12 feet from his back door, and runs it into a fan coil unit in his pantry. His January 2025 gas bill was £19, standing charge only. He paired the Old One's trench with a second technique from Bert Hartley's 1923 ledger. Hartley wrote about a buried clay water jar, the size of a milk churn, sunk in the earth between the pantry and the back wall of the cottage, with a wide neck rising into the larder above. The jar fills with rainwater from a downpipe and holds 9 degrees year-round. The larder above it stays at 17 degrees Celsius, the temperature of a proper cool larder, in July and in January, without an electric fridge and without a chest freezer running on a meter. Total cost for both systems combined, materials and digger hire, and the clay jar from a Pennine pottery, around £400. Total time, 1 long weekend. Total electricity consumed, the wattage of a single 40-watt circulator pump on the glycol loop, less than a desk lamp. I spent 22 years paying British Gas to solve a problem that a 40-pound length of terracotta pipe and a 10-pound bed of crushed limestone handled. Nobody told me. Not the builder who installed my last combi boiler in 2011. Not the gas-safe engineer who serviced it every November. Not the council planning officer who signed off on the extension. Bert Hartley taught me. Or rather, he sat in his kitchen at 21 degrees Celsius in January and waited for me to figure it out. The knowledge was never lost. It was set aside, put on a shelf, reclassified in 1969, removed from the archive in 1972, and covered up by an industry that profits every single month that you do not know it exists. The terracotta is still at every farm supply yard in the north of England. The crushed limestone is still in every Pennine quarry. The soil 6 feet under your back garden is still holding 9 degrees Celsius, the way it has held 9 degrees since the last ice age ended. The only thing that was missing was someone willing to dig the trench, set the grate, and tell you what your great-grandfather's neighbor already knew. If you are the kind of person who believes that real practical knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect someone else's profit margin, then you already understand what is happening here. You have seen it before in other industries. The pattern is always the same. A simple solution exists. It threatens a revenue stream, and somehow it disappears from the public conversation. This is no different, except this time, you know, and once you know, you cannot unknow it. I want to hear from you. Comment with your county and the total figure on your last January gas bill. I want to see how high it really gets across this country, county by county. And if your grandfather or grandmother kept a buried clay larder, a sunken kitchen floor, or any kind of ventilation trench that was already in the back garden when you were a child, tell us about it. Your experience is going to help somebody else stop paying a bill they do not owe. Subscribe to the channel if you want to keep pulling these threads with me. Next week, I'm going to walk you through the Yorkshire summer kitchen detachment trick that drops a stone cottage by 6 degrees Celsius in July, and the architect's manual from 1938 that the post-war housing boom quietly buried.